We begin this news hour with rising tensions between the US and China, which are causing ripples across the Taiwan Strait. Taiwan is one of the key issues in a deepening strategic rivalry between Beijing and Washington. The Taiwanese defense minister says tensions with China are now at their worst in 4 decades. Tu Cheng told a parliamentary committee there was a high risk of an armed mishap occurring. His comments come after repeated incursions by Chinese warplanes into the island's air defense zone. Mr. Chu said that while China could already attack Taiwan, Beijing would have the capacity to mount a full-scale invasion by 2025.
The Economist headline on their magazine saying Taiwan is the most dangerous place on earth. Do you agree with that? The Economist is foreign media. It is not official. The current situation, to us, the military, and I'm just reporting it to the legislators, is that it's the most severe in the 40 years since I've enlisted. Speaking about invading Taiwan, China does currently possess such capabilities, but we must consider the consequences. We don't want to take any provocative actions, but if we irritate them, it is like irritating a person. A person would employ gathering at hand when irritated. So following our judgments, the year 2025 is a year they will have more comprehensive capabilities.
Meanwhile, President Biden says he has spoken to his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping about Taiwan amid mounting tension caused by large numbers of Chinese military incursions into Taiwan's airspace. Mr. Biden said they had agreed to abide by the Taiwan Agreement, an apparent reference to an understanding that China will not try to regain Taiwan by force as long as the US does not recognize it as independent.
China's provocation over Taiwan. Well, I've spoken with Xi about Taiwan. We agree we will abide by the Taiwan agreement. That's where we are. And we made it clear that I don't think he should be doing anything other than abiding by the agreement.
President Biden. Well, Arise US correspondent Eric Ham joins us now from Washington for more on this. Good to see you, Eric. So an attempt to de-escalate the situation by Joe Biden. He's agreed to abide by the Taiwan Agreement, as has Beijing. Tell us more details about that.
Yeah, that's right. And the agreement that the president refers to is the One China policy that while recognizes Taiwan as an autonomous region, China does recognize that China is one, and that therefore it would not adhere to this idea that Taiwan is an independent, autonomous nation from China. Now, China has been saying that Taiwan is a part of China and it is just an annexed region. But what we have seen over the last 4 days, more than 815 flights by military air jets flying into the neutral zone of Taiwan, which has led to intense reaction from Taiwan as a result of this. In fact, what we're seeing is it is putting a number of nations on notice that China is becoming increasingly more belligerent and aggressive. Both Japan and Australia have responded to these aggressions, and we are now seeing that with Japan and the United States engaged in military exercises in the South China Seas. China has been seeing that as an aggressive move towards China, which is why many believe that China is beginning to aggressively encroach on Taiwanese airspace. And many believe that China is only about 4 years away from preparing for a full-scale military approach to Taiwan, taking it back by force if necessary. And so what we saw today was President Biden attempting to try to cool things down, to try to tamp things down as tensions continue to ratchet up, not just between the United States, Taiwan, and China, but also many of its neighboring allies. And Charles, it's important to note that many see Taiwan, particularly as a democratically elected area and an authoritarian, in the backdrop of an authoritarian country as China. Many see this as the last domino to fall for democracy if, in fact, China is able to successfully take Taiwan back.
Okay, Eric, do stay with us because I want to get your thoughts on this next story. The Facebook boss, Mark Zuckerberg, has defended his company from accusations that it puts profits before user safety after a former employee turned whistleblower gave damning testimony to a US Senate committee. In a blog post, Mr. Zuckerberg said the argument that Facebook deliberately pushed content that made people angry was illogical. The whistleblower, Francis Haugen, said Facebook executives knew their content could harm children and weaken democracy, but the company would not reform itself.
Simply a matter of... But I'm here today because I believe Facebook's products harm children, stoke division, and weaken our democracy. The company's leadership knows how to make Facebook and Instagram safer, but won't make the necessary changes because they have put their astronomical profits before people. Congressional action is needed. They won't solve this crisis without your help.
And Eric is still with us from Washington. Eric, what's your assessment of how damaging this testimony has been to Facebook?
Yeah, Charles, I was actually there yesterday for part of that hearing, and it was very damning testimony that we saw from this Facebook whistleblower responding and speaking directly to much of the insider happenings at Facebook, and much of her criticisms were pointed directly at the Facebook chief and the face of Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg. And Charles, what really came out of that hearing yesterday was just the level of bipartisan agreement by Republicans and Democrats that something must be done specifically about Facebook. And we know already that both sides of the aisle are working together to develop legislation that they believe will help rein in Facebook. And it was very damning testimony that we saw from this whistleblower that not only talked about how Facebook is damaging to children, but also how Facebook is able to foment discord as it relates to democracy that we have seen in the United States, as well as ethnic conflict taking place around the world. And so what we saw from this testimony yesterday was the threat of Facebook goes beyond just what many see on the surface, but how damaging and how widespread this is. And what we saw from this hearing also was Senator Marsha Blackburn, who is the ranking member of the committee, basically spoke about how Facebook was in damage control even before the testimony got underway, as she received a statement from a spokesperson from Facebook actually condemning the words and actions of this whistleblower.
And briefly, Eric, when Mark Zuckerberg appeared before Congress himself, the lawmakers seemed to have a wobbly grasp of what it is that Facebook does. I mean, have they sharpened up at all about what Facebook does and appear poised to take some action now? Briefly? Well,
Charles, we do know that the testimony yesterday certainly struck a nerve both with Facebook and with Congress. The question has always been, is Congress adequately aligned and set up to actually be able to do something effective about Facebook? Many are still wondering if, in fact, that's possible.
Spot on. Thank you very much indeed. Eric Ham, our U.S. correspondent, talking to me there from Washington.